for each other. When it comes down to tailboards, do a good verbal tailboard. And when you do a verbal tailboard, don't just read it out. Get interaction. Put people on the spot with it. It keeps people in tune. Stuff like that. Just a good safety culture. The change that I've been seeing, I'd like to promote and keep driving it.
The tailboard, that's a good topic because, I remember coming up in the trade, that I remember one of the, having to start doing the tailboards in the early 90s. I was just a little bit ahead of you in age. I remember what they always taught us is, like you said, the paper, the document, it just documents the verbal conversation that you have amongst the crew, that you have a conversation. And I think now we find ourselves, from what I've seen, there's a comfort level in checking the boxes on the pre-job brief or the tailboard and not really spending the time to have a good conversation, cover all your bases, and then document it. I think that's I'm glad you brought that up because I think that is a good tool for all of us.
I think it's almost kind of done like a full circle. I know before it was more of a verbal thing and maybe not documented. And then there was a moment in time where it was getting documented. You've seen a lot of pencil whipping, just everyone signing on. And then hopefully the drive of the culture, we can get it back to good verbal talks and documenting it. And then, so it's almost done a circle there back to the good verbals and documentation.
Yeah, I like the thing that you said. Can you repeat what you said about you like it to be interactive and you ask questions or engage the crew members?
I think that's the best way to keep people engaged. People listen when you're doing that. As far as, like I was saying on that last job that I was looking after, our safety guy, he actually that's how he ran his safety meetings as well. And you do that in safety meetings and, it gets people engaged, it gets people talking about stuff. It's not just, hey, everyone sit here and listen to the safety guy. That's another thing that, when you promote that culture and you have everyone on board, those safety meetings, they go a lot not longer, but they drive home more when you're getting everyone interacting, having some fun out of it. He was good at that. He would put some funny slides in or some funny jokes in there, and he had people laughing, and people enjoyed the safety meetings, and you walked away thinking about it or talking about it after. It wasn't just something that, it's our Sunday safety meeting, we got to sit through this. So that's another reason, one thing that the culture, just having that positive safety culture can drive too. So
you mentioned new hands coming up in the trade. What do you think their biggest challenges are now?
The biggest challenge is, I'd say, when you're working with them, the leaders got to remember that, especially if they're fresh grade out of high school, they just don't have the real world experience. They do get the funny questions or just the different views, and we are coming across new generations. So there's a bit of miscommunication or misunderstanding there. You've got to be very patient. You got to understand that they might not have any idea what you're talking about, what they're doing. There was one kid out there, he come up. I actually worked with his father in my career when I was an apprentice. And I really liked working with him. He's a bit of a hard ass, but I ended up working with his son. Got his son out there. I really took pride in taking the time to make sure he was getting the proper training or that you need to really understand stuff. Anytime we sent him or he was to do something, we made sure he fully understood everything. And I think that goes a long way if you're a leader, to show that patience or that tension. Be positive with them. You got to still be a little hard ass on them once in a while, just so they know you're their boss and not just their buddy. But yeah, it goes a long way if you take the time, are patient, and then stern when you got to be with them.
We can go back in our career and we can hold our hands out and we can count on one hand all the guys that we came up under that were like that, and then we also probably can come up with the same list on the other hand of the ones that we would never want our own kids working in the same crew with.
Yeah, that's one thing, you'll always remember the biggest asshole to you, and you'll always remember the person who you appreciated. And that's something to always think about for the people out there that are listening and that are leaders or on their way to be leaders or want to be leaders. So that's one good thing to remember is when you interact with people, how they'll remember you or look back at you, and that's the image that you want to leave.
That's pretty huge, significant. 20 years from now, how do you want to be remembered? Once you make that impression, most times it's too late to change it.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier about work-life balance in your career with you traveling the way you have and starting in the trade at 14 years old. How in the world do you achieve any sort of work-life balance in this business?
So I will admit, until a few years ago, that's when I started really realizing that work-life balance. And that's something I'll admit in the past, I wasn't really balancing it that well. I was away all the time, did sacrifice a lot of my home life. I was really career-driven, work-driven. I was always doing that. But in the last couple of years here, I've been focusing more on my work-life balance. I realized that, I gotta start enjoying my time. I gotta start taking time off for me. I'll say my most recent relationship, the one I'm in, the one thing that I'm working on is to make it work and make sure I'm getting enough time in for us type thing. So that's another thing when people are getting into this trade, that's something that they should definitely keep in mind about getting home and understanding that. And I think that's part of the culture change as well, is the leaders now versus the leaders that had back then. That home life, that wasn't really a thing. And that's what I was kind of getting at when I was talking about the culture change was back then when I started, if you weren't gone for like 6 weeks at a time, you almost seemed soft. Whereas now the culture, it's a lot more positive. And I think it's the leaders now that are in the game. They understand that and that people do need the home life, and you do get better attitude at work. You get a better safety culture. You get everything if you have happy workers. If they're getting their time in at home, everyone wants to have a happy life. So it goes a long way letting people go home. And I think a lot more people understand that nowadays.
Yeah, we all were in that mode. I think back in the day, we all live to work. And it seemed like there was a time in my career where that changed, where I started working to live instead of living to work. I remember when I was with PG&E on the West Coast, sitting in my office, and I can't remember, maybe one of my supervisors or one of the line hands came in and was asking me if they could take off work to go see family or leave early to go to a ball game or something. And I said, look, family first on my watch. I've told you guys this. We work to live around here. This place isn't important. We'll cover for you. Go home and be with your family. They were very appreciative, left my office, and I remember my assistant, Veronica, came in my office and said, you're really good at giving that advice, but you suck at doing it.
Yeah.
And she asked me when the last time I saw my girls, they were back in Tennessee and they were teenagers. And I said, it's probably been 3 or 4 months since I've seen them. And she said, when's the last time you talked to them? I said, it's probably been, a couple weeks or whatever. And she said, tomorrow, we're not going to have this conversation again. When you come back in tomorrow, you need to have had a conversation with your kids. So sometimes we all, it does us all good to be reminded. That is why we do what we do. I mean, it's a good living, but it is why we do what we do is for our home life and for our family and our friends and ourself for enjoyment. So many times, I'm sure you've seen it too, guys, and I mean, ladies both in the trade. Any business, they work their entire career, and like the generation before us, like you said, there was not much work-life balance, but in the same sense, I've seen so many people just pour their blood, sweat, and tears and their life into their career, and then they reach a certain age to finally reach that finish line to where they're able to retire, and then something terrible happened, and then them not be around much longer, and it's just like all that time was in vain.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem fair,
Yeah, and you definitely see that a lot with the the older fellers there, the guys that we looked up to and that coming through our career. And then you kind of look and you see it a lot in the trade, guys that worked their whole life in the trade, sacrificed the home life, and then you kind of look and, you can be working beside each other, and you talk to them, and, that's advice that they'll give is take the time to get in with the family and appreciate the time while you can.
Time goes by so fast.
Yeah, the work to live, don't live to work. So one thing I say, line to live, don't live to line.
So one of the things, talk about work-life balance, you and I both have hobbies that we probably don't make a lot of money compared to what we do on our real jobs. I know I have the podcast, and you have a side gig as well. Let's talk about that a little bit, because I hear it's quite successful.
Yeah, so I started a clothing brand, Locked and Tagged. Basically, how it came about, it's been an idea for a while. You see lineman clothing and that, and, I always felt like, well, I could make some cooler, nicer, maybe more appealing clothing. So I wanted to get into that. And then actually when I was working with Ray Lynn, we were talking about it and that, and, we were shooting ideas and that. And then there was another guy that I worked with, or he worked for me before, talking with him, and he actually had a clothing line before. So I was talking with both of them and that, and, that's kind of how things got going. The other guy, he kind of knew the ins and outs and helped get things going that way. And then, so it kind of took off. I've been making clothing, designing clothing, everything from, hats to shoes and everything in the middle. The idea behind the brand, I'm a lineman by trade, it's Powerline Apparel, trying to focus the clothing on the industry, whether you're the guy putting the footings in the ground or the guy stringing the wire in the air, there'll be something there. It is going to be a little more driven towards linemen because I do have the lineman attitude and the lineman pride in me. There's definitely going to be a little more stuff favoring there, but I'd like to get the idea out that, when we do build line and transmission lines, it takes the whole team to build it. It takes the guys doing the right of way in the road and delivering the material, the guys putting the footings in the ground, the assemblers assembling the towers, building the towers, and then the linemen. It takes a big team to build these big lines, and you see a lot of companies doing the lineman stuff, and it's all about the lineman. Well, I'd like to get it out there that we're all power line workers. We're all in the family. We all work together. Yeah, just get stuff out there for everyone and show appreciation that way.
That's a really good thought, and I've tried to do that as well, because I know for the success of the business, for the trade, as you've mentioned, there's a lot of moving parts. Where can these clothing line be found?
My store's Instagram is Locked and Tagged. My website is lockedandtagged.com. And then on Facebook, it's just Locked and Tagged. Yeah, Instagram, Facebook, and then the store, the online store. And then, I'm working on TikTok. That's kind of a newer thing. Wasn't really a big social media person, but getting into it here. Yeah, I'm always doing. I'm actually every month I do a picture contest, and I give away a hat or a hoodie, and then every month I do a best follower giveaway too, and that alternates from my Facebook and to my Instagram. So if you're liking the most stuff, sharing the most stuff, that type of thing, someone at the end of the month gets a hat or a hoodie. Another interesting thing in my career, through my career, I don't know if you heard of Voltage Power.
I have not.
So they were a company, or they are a company, but I was actually part owner of Voltage Power. There was a group of shareholders, and through my career, people I worked with and that, and the people who viewed me valuable, I was a part of building that company up, and we actually sold it to Acon about a year ago. And they're still a company now. They're more doing station stuff and that. But yeah, we did a 500 line in Manitoba. We did two 500 lines in Manitoba we worked on, and then we did a job out here at 230 line out in BC here. So it was actually quite a venture there, but maybe that's time for another podcast episode maybe.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I tell you, I've really enjoyed chatting with you. I wish, from what I've seen, you and Ray and some of the others I've interviewed, I would love to be all in the same town so we could swap stories more than what we do, you know?
Yeah. Well, Ray, she's actually out in Manitoba right now.
I messaged her to, I said I was interviewing you tonight, and she said, no way, how did it go? And I was like, well, I'm on the phone with him right now, but she hasn't